Hello, everyone.
Greetings.
I'll tell you what's going to happen in general. We will have 7 mentoring sessions. Today, our topic is lead generation strategy, correct formulation of segments, offers, and audience segments. It will be without a presentation, without a screen demonstration, because the topic is more, well, strategic, actually. Yes, to think about how, in general, where to start, how it should all be built. Okay, let's go. The topic of today's lecture is lead generation strategy and the correct formulation of segments, offers, and audiences. So today we'll talk, first of all, in general, what modern lead generation on LinkedIn should look like. First of all, outbound. We will have inbound at the end as the last lesson. And we'll talk about how to properly segment the audience, not for the sake of just cutting it into pieces, but for the sake of actually testing some hypotheses and understand how lead generation works with your proposal, with your offer. And in fact, in general, how to work through, create hypotheses, how to test them, what volumes are needed for testing. In general, it's an introductory lecture, so to speak. So, where do we start? Let's start with the fact that for successful lead generation, you need a certain set of capabilities. Let's put it that way. A certain set of capabilities. Because in the early stages, especially when you don't know yet, you haven't clearly defined your cold offer. You don't understand what will trigger the audience to enter into a dialogue with you. You need to test it quickly and on a massive scale. Because if you make, well, I don't know, 10 requests for each offer, you won't understand what worked. So, to begin with, we need a sufficient number of LinkedIn profiles. That is, the first is LinkedIn profiles, which are limited in the number of contact requests, the number of automatic actions, in the number of many different actions they can perform. They are limited. Therefore, we need a sufficient number of LinkedIn accounts at the start. I recommend if we take, for example, we understand that we have several hypotheses, we want to test them over a month to understand which of them work better, which of them work worse. Then we should calculate that we should have 2 LinkedIn profiles for each of our hypotheses. That's the first thing. Second, you must have a tool for automating contact collection. Otherwise, you'll just be collecting them manually for weeks, and that will also take a long time. You need a tool like Clay or Apollo or Crunchbase or something else. We will discuss it in the second or third lesson, these tools, or Sales Navigator. That is to choose a tool. And third, you need a tool to automate the mailing itself, in which you will build your hypotheses, write your offers, and understand which of them works. Next, well, essentially, this is the bare minimum. So, going further, buying additional things like major automations, such as integrations with CRM systems or automating connections with other external tools. That's not necessary at the start because LinkedIn doesn't work like that. It's not like you launch a campaign today and tomorrow you have 100 leads, roughly speaking, and you need a CRM to react quickly and take action. Now, LinkedIn is a long game. So, if we're talking about high competition, meaning markets with a lot of competition, for example, if you have companies or businesses in IT outsourcing, right? So, service based IT companies, design, web design studios, well, basically, those who've been selling on LinkedIn for a long time, very successfully and in large volumes, these are highly competitive markets. And there, in principle, testing hypotheses and getting the first leads can easily take 2 to 4 months. If you're in markets with lower competition on LinkedIn, meaning either physical goods or some tech products that already have a market fit and a USP, then it can take less time. It could be 3 to 5 weeks. So you need to plan for that it's a long game. You need to understand that you're getting into this to find your offer, to find your unique selling proposition that will generate leads. And it's going to be a long term thing. So, Jinya, regarding this setup, is there anything else to add, or should we move on to the logic of formulating offers and segmentation?
Let's move on to the logic, because, well, again, we'll break down the setup later. At the basic stage, just 2 or 3 tools are enough, and that's it. So everything more complex comes later, once you understand that it works for you. You'll find the right hypothesis that will bring in and generate leads for you. And then you can scale up, you can invest more money, and make this whole process more advanced. At the initial stage, that's enough.
Right. So the next question is about the biggest mistake that most lead generators and companies make when they start outreach on LinkedIn. They come back and say, nothing is working for us. We've tested a bunch of audiences and it's all failing. The mistake is the segmentation of the offer and the segmentation of the audience. So, for example, if we're doing classic targeting, classic targeted advertising, you usually segment from the audience to the offer. So we understand which audience segments we can reach. And based on that, we write the offers for the ads. In lead generation, in outreach, we work the other way around. So, in any case, you have a company where you are either a founder or an employee. You have successful client case studies, you have some results. And you understand that, for example, if you're a development company, you did a great job and can talk about a CRM system for, say, health tech, some, I don't know, analytics for aerospace, or an educational platform for companies involved in online education, and so on. And you segment based on these specific offers. So you don't just segment by saying, I want health tech, fintech, and startups, and then go to all of them and say, you can build websites. You segment based on where you can provide a unique offer. So you can go to education companies and confidently say that you know how to build a robust and reliable online education platform that, roughly speaking, doesn't crash. One that gave your other clients, let's say, a 30% increase in student retention. You can show the numbers, say, look, we're great at this. We increased retention by 30%. You have the proof. And you segment your audiences based on the differences in your offers. So your hypotheses are your different offers for different audiences. That's the approach we take. Second, within each segment, meaning within each offer, you also can't know at the beginning how to best convey that offer to the target audience. So within a segment, there's further resegmentation in the style of A B testing. So, roughly speaking, if we're unsure which message will get through, which will get our lead to a meeting or another CTA, we set up A B testing and test sub hypotheses within our main hypothesis. And so at the end of the month, when, as I said, you'll have two LinkedIn profiles per hypothesis, meaning one hypothesis will process 1,000 contacts, you'll see the conversions in the monthly results. You'll see real potential interest, at least initially, and you'll understand whether to continue developing that hypothesis. And you shouldn't be afraid of burning out your audience. Like if you've tested a hypothesis, sent it out to 1,000 contacts, and it seems to be working, but you need to tweak something, improve it so it converts at the final stage, that's normal. If you have two LinkedIn profiles per hypothesis, you can swap them later. And you can reach out to the same leads or other leads from the same companies with that same proposition, but an improved version. Believe me, in 2 or 3 months, no one will remember that you wrote to them before, testing some options that may or may not have worked. You can calmly reach out to that lead again from a different LinkedIn profile and get a result using the already proven hypothesis. Once you know it works, you've refined it, it converts better, and you can go after that same audience again, just from different LinkedIn profiles. It works 100%. Believe me, most of you, if you're in our LinkedIn funnel from our mailing list, you probably get a message from us every 3 to 4 months consistently, but it's from different LinkedIn profiles because we have 14 or 15 of them. So you also need to have a more or less solid setup to do the same thing and consistently get clients, even from the very same audience, by constantly reminding them about yourself and trying to reach the right lead at the right time. So I've made my point about hypotheses, and now I've smoothly transitioned into the topic of the right time, right? What we're talking about, which, by the way, is now. It's already October, the middle of the business season. And right now, lead generation is giving the best results, basically. Then there'll be a bit of a dip in the winter, and in the spring, everything will be great again. This is about the right time because overall, in your lead generation, there are several aspects that have to align for you to get a lead and then for your sales team to have a chance to close it into a deal. First is the right proposition, which you test with your hypotheses and offers. You figure out what works and what doesn't, you test it, and you find it. Second is the right audience, meaning for these hypotheses, for these offers, you need a clearly defined audience. You have to gather exactly the people you need. So if it's online education, it has to be clearly online education. If it's tech startups from the US, then it's tech startups from the US. And preferably, you'd even separate them into blockchain, classic, and product based. Third is sufficient volume. I mean, it makes no sense to do cold outreach to an audience of 30 companies in the entire world. You're unlikely to reach them. You need to approach it a bit differently. Communicate for a very long time with specific people, go through personal connections, and so on. That's a separate story we can talk about, but not in this lesson. So you need to have a sufficient volume of potential audience, and you have to reach them quickly enough because again, if you enter an audience segment where there are, for example, 15,000 potential contacts or leads, and you need to reach them, if you stretch those 15,000 out over two LinkedIn profiles that will be working for 15 months, then you're very unlikely to reach a lead with your proposition at the exact moment they need it. Meaning, if you come to me today, I don't need anything. If you come back in 6 months, I might need it by then. But if you have a 15,000 person audience, you'll get back to me in at least 15 months. And you lose out in a competitive market to those with larger volumes who come in and ping or trigger their leads in every audience segment every 3 to 4 months. You need to have a sufficient volume of reach. You have to plan on having a large number of LinkedIn profiles. You can get them from your team, you can rent them, you can warm up your own, but that's a very long story. Well, Xenia will talk about that in the lesson on LinkedIn profiles. So you need to have the right offer, the right audience, sufficient opportunity for reach, and a sufficient volume for each audience segment, and a systematic approach. Meaning, if your automation, your contact tool is built in such a way that you just send invites and then manually try to catch them to write them something, that's not systematic. You lose contacts, you forget about people, you lose track of them somewhere. So your automation has to be built from the beginning to the very end, to the moment when the lead says either yes or a clear no. That is, you have to automate the entire cold outreach process up to the start of a manual dialogue. And the manual dialogue should be conducted through a CRM system. So you never forget about anyone, ever, meaning setting tasks for follow ups and so on. Right. What else? Jenya, maybe you'll add something?
Okay, I'll probably pick up on my topic now, which is about creating the offers themselves. So we'll talk more about the details of creating them, how to deliver them, what letters to write, and so on. But for now, let's talk about a very basic thing. A very common mistake I see with people who try to sell their products through LinkedIn. It's entering with the highest price service. Let's say, for example, you sell consulting to IT companies, and for example, you're consulting an architectural team on how to better scale some products, and so on and so forth. That's a pretty expensive service. And if no one knows you, I mean, they might buy this service from you from scratch if, for example, someone recommended you, or if they've been following you for a long time, or you're creating content. I don't know. You have a YouTube channel and the person sees your expertise from some other sources. If you try to sell something super expensive right from the start, they won't buy it from you. Accordingly, when you start selling something through LinkedIn, you need a low entry point. That is, let's say if we're talking about that same consulting, then accordingly, you first need to sell. Not the consulting, but some kind of audit session. Even for free, most likely for free. Because the person, first of all, has to feel your expertise before they trust you and spend money on your services. For example, if you're doing complex strategic marketing, then start with PPC ads, for example, or with SEO, or with targeted ads. That is some small offer where a person isn't so afraid to invest a small amount, but from which they can understand that you're an expert. And then you can upsell and scale this client to the result you want. And if we take an example from, say, some traditional businesses, well, it could be, for example, selling some factory equipment, some large machines. I mean, they can cost 300, 400, 500,000 euros. But if you're a new manufacturer in the local market that nobody knows, then no one will buy this from you. Maybe not the best example, but hypothetically, if you want to sell, say, 500,000 euro machines, then first start by selling spare parts for them. And based on that, you can build some kind of brand. Accordingly, well, the reason it's not a perfect example is because not every manufacturer can make, say, universal spare parts, right? The most important thing is to create an entry point. Create several different entry points and test which one will work best. If you have previous experience, if you have case studies, if you have analytics on which industries your clients most often come from, what service they most often order first. If you work with other ad accounts with the same PPC or, say, meta ads and so on, analyze which offers people bite on most often there. Because, well, the audience, if you're targeting the same segment, it doesn't matter in which channel. They will react, their problems are more or less the same, and they look for more or less the same solutions. So we developed several entry points. Maybe one that starts, as I said, just with an audit or with some cheap product, or if you're a manufacturer, sending free samples or something like that. And we test what will work best out of this. We work for 1 month, maybe two if you have a small number of profiles. And after that, we choose which offer works best. And then accordingly, we start to scale it.
A great example, first of all, is, for example, if you do web design, then make a test web design of some module or do an audit. That is to say, hi, let me do an audit of your design. I'll show you where the problems might be. And then you can sell the correction of this design or the design development, right? But it could possibly be some kind of universal control module, or perhaps a universal module that adds additional value to competitors' devices, which is produced only temporarily for a short period of time and not intended for permanent or ongoing use. Conditionally speaking, an interesting unfair advantage, it seems to me, is to make a module that really, truly greatly improves life, greatly simplifies production, sell it to everyone, and then stop its production, update and remake it, so that later it's produced only for your mechanisms. You know who does that, by the way? It's damn ChatGPT. OpenAI creates opportunities to integrate their AI into other tools, and then they go and make the exact same tool for themselves, only better than yours. And they do this with a lot of things, and this is a prime example of why they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So today is more of a general overview, so you understand what you need as a whole to launch your lead gen. And to wrap up the lecture part of this meeting, I want to add that LinkedIn lead generation outreach content, it's a very, very powerful tool. For example, it gives us about 80% of our clients, both in services and in our product. Well, but we do work with LinkedIn, right? But even for us, it's 80%. So when you enter the market with your marketing strategy, don't forget that with LinkedIn alone, it's hard to cover all your needs. You need to look for other avenues that will work specifically for your business, for your product, your offer, and so on. But LinkedIn, in my experience, really provides the most interesting, most relevant B2B leads in the markets of Europe, North and South America, the Middle East, Africa as a whole, and even in Ukraine. With most of you who are watching, whether you're from Ukraine or watching from other countries around the world. In any case, someone from our team first communicated with you on LinkedIn. And then we met here in this lesson on this course. And now we're moving forward, building your lead generation. So with that, I think we'll wrap up the lecture part. So have a great day, everyone. I'm glad to welcome you all to our mentorship program, to our first lesson. I look forward to the next one.
Bye bye, everyone.
All right, see ya.